Waitress's amazing support for orphaned kids discovered by a billionaire CEO. Sarah's vibrant smile lit up the small diner like the sun breaking through an overcast sky. But beneath that warmth lay a constant ache. Every day, she balanced the demands of two jobs, a waitress at the Oakwood Diner and a caretaker at the local orphanage. One chilly afternoon, curiosity flickered through the diner as a sleek black car pulled into the gravel parking lot, seeming out of place among the comforting chaos. The door swung open, and from it emerged Jonathan, a polished billionaire CEO, stepping into a world so foreign to him. The moment Jonathan entered, the diner's usual chatter faded. His sharp suit contrasted starkly with the worn-out decor of the diner. As he sat at the counter, Sarah bustled over, her laughter ringing like a melody amidst the clinking plates. "What can I get for you?" she asked, the genuine warmth radiating from her effortless charm. Over pancakes they chatted, yet as Jonathan looked into her eyes, he felt drawn in, captivated by the way she spoke passionately about the kids at the orphanage who became her heart and soul. Sarah's commitment sparked something deep within him, a growing unease. Her laughter echoed, yet it clashed against the reality he faced. His decisions were turning into a deadly tsunami that threatened to engulf everything she loved. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. In that instant, Jonathan's heart tightened. He wrestled with guilt as the revelation surfaced, almost like a shadow creeping into the light. His company was slashing budgets that would directly affect the orphanage funding. For Sarah, this was not just a dream, but a lifeline, a place where the children clung to the hope of belonging. But he had the power to threaten that existence with a single move from his position. The thought churned his gut. Her face, so full of kindness, haunted his mind, and yet he found himself standing on the edge of a precipice. Jonathan observed Sarah as she diligently poured coffee for customers and served mouth-watering burgers, her joy juxtaposed against his inner turmoil. How could his career demands align with her charitable desires? It tore at his conscience, the realization that his ambition could extinguish her light. Moments sped by like the flicker of a flame about to go out. Sarah's eyes sparkled as she spoke about the children, her dreams pouring out like the coffee she poured. But her dreams felt fragile, hovering on the edge of a precipice as Jonathan's threads of corporate power pulled tighter around her aspirations. Time warped as a ringing phone shattered the delicate bubble of their interaction, an urgent call from the orphanage, the chaos of a crisis brewing, and Sarah felt her heart sink. She stood at a crossroads, anxious breath quickening as logical barriers threatened to crumble. Confront Jonathan about the impending disaster, or retreat into silence, fearing that the truth would shatter her fragile reality. Each option felt more dangerous than the last, and she realized that the decision she faced might determine the fate of the kids she loved as much as if they were her own. Anguish enveloped her, each heartbeat hammering a reminder. Could kindness truly transcend the barriers created by wealth and circumstance? The answers loomed large, yet remained undiscovered, leaving both of them staring into an uncertain abyss. Raw tension igniting their paths, waiting for a choice to emerge. The air was thick with unspoken tension as Sarah stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her instincts screamed at her to act, to grasp the urgency coursing through her veins like fire. But confrontation had never been her forte. Instead, she had mastered the art of quiet resilience, hiding her fears behind a smile that reassured everyone around her. But this felt different. Each child's face flickered in her mind, a tapestry of hopes and dreams woven together by the fragile threads of their shared experiences. She couldn't let the looming budget cuts sever those threads. The thought of Jonathan's indifference, his towering position standing in stark contrast to her humble efforts, felt like a noose tightening around her hope. "Sarah?" The voice on the other end of the line interrupted her spiraling thoughts. It was Mary, the head of the orphanage, urgency laced in each syllable. "We need to figure something out. The kids, they're counting on us." Taking a deep breath, Sarah rallied her courage. "I'll be there as soon as I can," she replied, determination fusing with her anxiety. As she hung up, her gaze drifted back to Jonathan, his perfect features still overshadowed by the grim reality they both faced. "Excuse me, I need to," she began, but Jonathan reached out. His expression shifted from one of curiosity to concern. "Is everything okay?" he asked, the softness of his voice cutting through the din of the diner. "My kids at the orphanage," she swallowed hard, the enormity of her task crashing down on her. "There's a crisis. I need to help them." In that moment, she saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. It was a shared recognition. "Is there something I can do?" The sincerity in his question threw her off balance. Sarah hadn't expected empathy from someone with so much power, and yet here it was, raw and disarming. Could he actually help? Her mind raced with possibilities, but doubt crept in. Could she trust someone whose existence seemed at odds with her fight for the children? "I don't know if—" She hesitated, wrestling with her instinct to keep the walls up. But she needed to break through the barriers, both her own and his. "Your company is planning budget cuts. You could help us in so many ways if you wanted to." Jonathan's face paled slightly, a storm of emotions churning behind his professional facade. "I wasn't aware. He paused, searching for words that felt heavier than the weight on his shoulders. "I can talk to the board. We can find a way to maintain funding for the orphanage. I promise you, Sarah, I'll do what I can." Sarah breathed deeply, the flicker of hope igniting inside her chest. "You don't just have the power to make promises, Jonathan. You have the power to change lives." His eyes locked onto hers, the magnitude of her words hanging in the air like an unshakable truth. "Then I need to learn how," he replied slowly, his voice steadying as if grounding himself in her conviction. "Teach me what I can do." As the coffee shop buzzed around them, a new path unfolded, a partnership born from shared struggle, yet anchored in vastly different worlds. Sarah felt a strange mix of vulnerability and strength swarming within her. It had not just become about her fight anymore. It was now about igniting a fire in Jonathan, awakening a sense of responsibility within his corporate core. Sarah began outlining a plan. Her words spilled forth, the passionate advocacy for her children flowing like a river, urgent, relentless, hopeful. She felt the barrier of her earlier hesitation crack, revealing an empowering possibility that they could bridge their disparate realities. Yet, as she spoke, fear clawed at the edges of her determination. Would Jonathan see this through, or would it all slip into the ether of corporate apathy? Just as quickly as hope surged, anxiety seeped back in. The tension fluctuated, a tug-of-war between what could be and the nagging doubt of what usually was. But Sarah pushed through, driven by the faces of the children awaiting her. She was forging a new connection, one brimming with potential. If she could inspire change in Jonathan, perhaps he could alter the course of their lives. "This is our chance, Jonathan," she declared, her voice unwavering. "But we have to make it count." The silence that followed felt electric, and deep down, a clenching certainty loomed. This was not just a simple dialogue anymore. It was a pivot point in both their lives. The gravity of their choices tightened, the stakes rising with almost palpable intensity as they stood on the cusp of transformation. Yet in the depths of her thoughts, another question began to take shape. Could their fragile alliance withstand the pressures of the world outside? Time whispered its urgency as lingering uncertainty loomed ever closer, leaving Sarah on the edge of revelation. What would it mean to trust someone with so much at stake? A strange mixture of excitement and apprehension coursed through her as she watched Jonathan's expression shift. He was deep in thought, processing the weight of her plea and the lives that hung in the balance. She took a moment to gather her own composure, reminding herself of her purpose. This was not just about saving the orphanage, it was about changing their world fundamentally. Her fight was as much about Jonathan's transformation as it was about the children's futures. "We'll need to draft a proposal," she began, glancing at the cluttered table. "A clear vision of how the funds will be used. Detailed allocations of resources, a breakdown of the programs we're currently running, and what we could achieve with sustained support." A fire ignited within her spirit as she spoke. She had navigated these waters before, but this felt vastly more significant. Jonathan nodded, his brow furrowing with concentration. "I can pull in some specialists from my company to help refine it. They'll know what the board will respond to. We can make it professional and compelling." The thought startled her. For the first time, she saw Jonathan's corporate acumen not as a threat, but as an asset. A reservoir of expertise that could serve the very community she poured her heart into. Would he come to see these children, these dreams, not just as numbers on a spreadsheet, but as real lives in need of action? "Absolutely," she responded, surprised by her enthusiasm. "But we have to ensure it conveys our urgency. This isn't just about budgets. This is about lives hanging in the balance." He caught her gaze, and for an instant their disparate worlds collided. She saw determination flicker in his eyes, but alongside it lay the shadow of doubt. Did he truly grasp the urgency? "Sarah," he finally spoke, the gravity of her plight sinking in. "What if the board rejects it? What if, she interjected, surprised by the force in her own voice. "What if they don't? That doesn't mean we don't try. Every day without funding is another day of neglect for those kids. They don't have the luxury of what-ifs." Her words landed not as an attack, but as a hard truth, a mirror reflecting the stark reality of their situation back at him. She noticed Jonathan's posture shift, a subtle indication that he was beginning to shed some of his corporate armor, leaving only the man beneath who was compelled by her struggle. "I have to believe it's worth the effort," he murmured, almost to himself. "If we can make this proposal compelling enough, maybe we can shift their focus. You don't just need to believe, you need to make them believe as well. It's not just about the facts, it's about the narrative. We have to paint a picture that pulls at their heartstrings while still meeting their bottom line." For a moment, Jonathan stared at her, and she could see different possibilities swirling in his mind. The realization struck her. Perhaps he had never encountered a situation where emotion drove decision-making in the boardroom. Could he harness the power of passion within a world driven by profit? As they sat contemplating their next moves, a sudden thought seeped into Sarah's mind. Would Jonathan face opposition from his colleagues? If he became the catalyst for change, could he withstand the pressures of the corporate world tugging him in the opposite direction? "I have to prepare you, Jonathan," she cautioned, her tone turning somber. "There will be pushback. Not everyone will support this, especially if it affects their bottom line." He exhaled slowly. "I didn't realize how complicated this was going to be. It's one thing to want to help. It's another to navigate the intricacies of a corporate landscape that thrives on profit margins. If you want to make a difference, you have to be ready to embrace discomfort. This fight isn't just mine anymore. It's ours," she declared, the weight of their alliance pressing down on her. They shared a moment of silence, two individuals dizzy with the possibility for change. Sarah felt the enormity of their undertaking settle over them, a mixture of hope and doubt tugging at her heart. In her mind, every child's face flashed, reminding her why they were here. But with Jonathan now more aware of the stakes, her resolve hardened. There was no turning back. "Look, I appreciate your willingness to try, but you need to stay true to your words. This partnership will require sacrifices from both of us. Yes, I understand. He lifted his chin, a flicker of newfound courage illuminating his demeanor. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed on the table, shattering the intensity of the moment. Cautiously, she glanced down, the dread pooling like ice in her stomach. It was a message from Mary, and as she read it, her pulse quickened. "Jonathan, we may not have much time left," she said, the urgency of Mary's text hammering at her heart. "Then we have to act now," Jonathan replied decisively. "Agreed," she said, her mind racing to synthesize all she'd just discovered about their partnership. Yet even as plans swirled like leaves caught in the wind, a gnawing thought settled in her gut. Was she leveraging him as a tool for her cause, or enacting real change? As they began to draft their proposal together, the question lingered, rooting itself deeper into her consciousness. Could Sarah live with herself if their alliance, forged in desperation, turned into a mere corporate strategy, devoid of the human heart driving it all? Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she stared at the blank pages of the proposal. The urgency emanating from Mary's text raced through her mind. "We need to make this proposal resonate," she stated, her voice steadier than she felt. "Let's pull together everything we have: data on the children, our current programs, and powerful testimonials from volunteers. We need to craft a narrative that shines a light on their lives." Jonathan leaned over the table, his brow furrowed in thought. "I can help organize the information," he suggested, already opening a laptop. "If we can get everything digitally documented, we can make adjustments as needed." His willingness to dive into the nitty-gritty caught her off guard. Sarah had not expected him to be so committed to the process. She watched as he clicked away, pulling a strategic plan into view, instantly seeing the marriage of corporate efficiency with the vulnerable needs of the children. But in the back of her mind lurked apprehension. What would happen when the corporate realities collided with the emotional weight of the mission? Would Jonathan's corporate instincts overrule her passionate drive? As Jonathan typed furiously, Sarah pulled a chair beside him. "Let's start with personal stories. I can write the introduction based on my time at the orphanage. If we can humanize these statistics—" "I have some ideas for that," Jonathan interrupted, his tone taking on the same fierce edge that had ignited their earlier conversations. "We should use statistics not just to frame the issue, but to highlight the urgency of action. What if we quantify the impact we've made so far? It could serve as a stark contrast to what will happen without additional funding." She hesitated. It was smart, but she felt a pang of concern. "But we have to ensure the focus remains on them, not just on numbers. People have to feel the difference." "Why not both?" he proposed. "It's possible to illustrate the emotional stakes and frame it in terms of return on investment." His approach piqued something within her, a foundational realization about Jonathan's capacity to synthesize emotion and pragmatism. Perhaps he had the potential to influence the corporate landscape in ways she had not given him credit for. They worked together closely, sharing bits of stories, strategies, and concerns. With every keystroke, doubt ebbed and flowed between them. But amid the scattered ideas and nerve-wracking pressure, a surprising synergy began to emerge. As hours slipped away, Sarah honed in on Jonathan. "What are your motivations for this, really?" she asked, curiosity tinged with wariness. He glanced up, surprise flickering across his face. It was as if she had pulled him from the depths of his corporate shell. "I don't know," he replied, his voice dropping slightly. "Maybe it's about proving to myself that I can contribute in a meaningful way. This is different from anything I've done before. The stakes are not just financial." His honesty struck her like a thunderclap. The facade of the often cynical business figure cracked, revealing a man grappling with moral clarity and a yearning to break free from his own constraints. "So you're putting your neck on the line to stand up for these kids?" Jonathan's eyes met hers, the tension between hope and fear palpable. "If we're going to do this, Sarah, We have to play to win. Then we have to talk to Mary and get her perspective. She understands these children, Sarah suggested, sensing the growing momentum of their collaborative effort. Before Jonathan could respond, her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Mary, but this time it was an update that made her blood run cold. "Sarah, we need to discuss the future of the orphanage urgently. The funding crisis is more severe than anticipated." The weight of those words sunk into her chest. "Jonathan, we might need to push harder and quicker than we thought. The stakes are even higher than we imagined," Sarah said, her heart racing as she processed the implications. He nodded, determination settling in his features. "Then we execute. We'll refine our proposal and present it as soon as possible." Yet, as they resumed their work, Sarah could not shake off the echoing doubts that accompanied such urgency. Was she steering Jonathan into a role he wasn't ready for? Or was she on the brink of unlocking a hidden potential in both of them? As moments passed and their proposal took shape, the question loomed large in her mind. Would they emerge as genuine allies, or would this endeavor turn into a battleground for conflicting ideologies? Each tick of the clock reminded her they were racing against time, but it wasn't just about the proposal anymore. It was about facing their fears and challenging everything they thought they knew about making a difference in a complicated world. The time had come to face the truth of their partnership. Could they genuinely impact these children's lives, or would their collaboration collapse under the weight of corporate conventions? The dim light of the cafe flickered nervously as Sarah leaned over the scattered notes, a whirlwind of thoughts churning in her mind. The urgency of the crisis loomed larger than life itself, drowning out the rhythmic sounds of coffee cups clinking and muffled conversations. She could feel the weight of Jonathan's expectations pressing down on her shoulders. As they prepared to meet with Mary, this was no longer just about the proposal, it was also about trust. "Have you thought about how we'll handle pushback?" Jonathan's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. He was staring intently at his notes, but there was a note of apprehension in his tone. His questioning gaze turned toward her, prompting a moment of reflection. "It's going to come from all sides, perhaps even from the board," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "But we need to present a united front." She could sense his anxiety mirroring her own as they navigated this unpredictable territory together. Jonathan nodded, brow furrowed as he jotted down her words. But the prospect of confrontation sparked a deeper, more personal fear within her. Would they truly be able to withstand the scrutiny and criticism? Would Jonathan falter when faced with the stark realities of stubborn corporate paradigms? "I think we need to be absolutely clear about our goals," he said, breaking her train of thought. "We can't let them divert our focus. We have to remain transparent and relatable." His conviction ignited a flicker of inspiration within Sarah, yet self-doubt whispered insidiously. Was transparency enough when surrounded by powerful interests? She took a deep breath, gathering courage to voice her concerns. "Jonathan, what if they don't see the kids as we do? What if they focus solely on profit margins?" He paused, looking as if he were contemplating the possibility for the first time. The fire in his eyes dimmed slightly. "That's a risk we need to confront head-on. Perhaps we should prepare a counter-narrative. We can use their metrics against them, show them what's at stake, not just morally, but financially in the long run." A plan began to unfurl as they spoke, their voices intertwining with growing determination. In that moment of devising strategy, she recognized something vital about their partnership. Jonathan's corporate instincts had now become an asset rather than a liability. They could be complementary forces, balancing each other's strengths and weaknesses in their relentless pursuit of a common objective. Still, the knot of doubt tightened in her stomach. She was wrestling with the fear of being judged, not only by the corporate board, but also by her own sense of purpose. Was she compromising her ideals to play the corporate game? But she pushed the thought aside. Focus, Sarah. The children needed them both. This was bigger than her reservations. "Let's meet with Mary and get her feedback. Her passion is contagious, and she knows these stories better than anyone, Sarah finally declared, hoping that exposure to Mary's energy would bolster their resolve. As the minutes passed, they prepared themselves mentally for their meeting. The ambience around them suddenly felt stifling, as though the very walls were closing in. The urgency was tangible, and the stakes became more pronounced as they exchanged committed looks. "Sarah," Jonathan's voice brought her back to the moment, "what if this becomes a turning point? This could redefine both our careers." His optimism wrapped around her like a warm coat, thawing her chills of doubt. "You're right. This is more than a proposal. It's about creating change." Just then, her phone buzzed with another message. It was from Mary, but this time it revealed a potential ally lurking closer than they thought. "I've connected with a few influential people who care about the children. Can we meet sooner?" The promise of a breakthrough ignited within Sarah. "Jonathan, this could change everything." As they began to gather their materials and draft their points, doubt shifted to anticipation. Suddenly, the shadows of their earlier concerns felt lighter, and they moved with purpose. Time had not been their enemy, but instead a catalyst that was empowering them through fear. "Are we ready?" Jonathan asked, a spark of energy rekindled in his eyes. "Ready as we'll ever be," Sarah replied, determination flooding her voice. But as they stood to leave, a troubling thought danced in her mind. Was she truly ready for the onslaught of challenges that awaited them? Or would hidden truths shatter their resolve? In unexpected ways? As they stepped out of the cafe, Sarah held fast to her belief in meaningful change. Yet a sense of dread lingered in the back of her mind, whispering uncertainties about her own capacity to rise above these doubts. The realm of corporate negotiations awaited, and their journey was only beginning. The streets bustled with life as Sarah and Jonathan stepped into the unfiltered energy of the city. For the briefest moment, the rhythm of their footsteps matched their beating hearts, both quickening with anticipation and anxiety. "Do you think she'll bring anyone else?" Jonathan asked, breaking the silence as they weaved between pedestrians, each one a reminder of the imminent stakes. His hand clutched the proposal like a protective talisman, shielding them from the unpredictability ahead. "Honestly, I hope so. The more advocates we have on our side, the stronger we can be." Sarah's mind reeled. She was determined to harness Mary's fervor and the support of their newly discovered ally. Yet uncertainty gnawed at her edges. What if their expectations were met with silence instead of applause? When they arrived at the conference room in the skyscraper, the walls seemed cold and imposing, even as the view from the floor-to-ceiling windows promised anything but. Sarah took a moment to breathe, steadied by the sight of the city sprawled below, a testament to the aspirations that built it. "Just remember why we're here," she whispered, looking at Jonathan. "This isn't just business, it's about those children." As they settled into their seats and shared pleasantries with Mary, Jonathan's professional demeanor shone, disarming tension. Yet Sarah felt her pulse quicken as the conversation veered towards the logistical details of the proposal. This was where her resolve would be tested. Mary exuded fervor, radiating the same passion that had initially drawn Sarah to their cause. "It's crucial to resonate emotionally. We have to connect, make them see lives, not just numbers," she insisted, meeting Sarah's gaze. "Yes, and if we frame it properly, we can leverage their focus on profitability to emphasize the long-term benefits of socially responsible initiatives," Jonathan interjected, grasping the urgency of the moment. They delved deeper into the logistics, but as Sarah contributed her ideas, she felt the burden of her initial doubts creeping back. Would their passion translate to the board? Could she truly compel people driven by financial motives to consider the moral weight of their decisions? The room seemed to shrink around her as her confidence began to wane. "Sarah, do you have metrics we can present?" Mary turned, her eagerness palpable. "We need a hook, something they can't ignore." The mention of metrics, Sarah's breath hitching. She had conducted her research and understood the numbers, but feared that the heavy reliance on metrics could dilute the emotional essence of their message, stripping it of its humanity. I can prepare a few financial forecasts, but we need to ensure the heart of our plan is not overshadowed by cold data. Jonathan nodded, but questioned, can the emotional appeal hold without the hard stats backing it up? The board loves to analyze. I refuse to choose one over the other. They complement each other, Sarah replied, injecting a fierceness into her voice that surprised even herself. It's not merely about profit, it's about creating sustainable change for those who have no voice. As the dialogue shifted again, Sarah discovered a fierce clarity within her. Each moment of doubt transformed into a resolve that deepened her conviction. She recognized her own ability to advocate for the children without sacrificing her core values. This was no longer about blending in. This was about standing out and remaining unapologetically committed to what she believed in. But as they wrapped up, Jonathan leaned closer. I sense some hesitation. Are you okay, Sarah? The warmth in his voice reminded her of the support they had built. Yeah, I want this to be impactful. I worry about how we'll be received. The conversation that had spiraled into excitement shifted back to her internal struggles. What if they failed? What if their message was lost in translation? Failure is part of growth, he replied gently. It's all about how we respond to it. We can't control their reactions, but we can own our presentation. His words pierced through her uncertainty, sparking a fresh determination within her. Then let's craft this to highlight the unknown potential. Let's wield our passion as our strongest weapon. With renewed purpose, Sarah felt a mantle of responsibility settle over her shoulders. If they could alight hope within this boardroom, it could ignite something far greater beyond those walls. But as she stepped into the prepared documents, the gnawing thought returned. What hidden alliances and rivalries awaited them in their presentation? As far as she had come in her journey, the untested waters of corporate negotiations loomed just ahead. Are we really ready? Jonathan's voice echoed in her mind, puncturing the cocoon of her confidence. As they exchanged determined glances, Sarah realized they were on the precipice of something monumental. It wasn't just a proposal anymore, it felt like a reckoning. What truths were still veiled, waiting to be revealed when they stepped into that boardroom? The tension in the air was palpable as Sarah and Jonathan stood almost at the threshold of the boardroom, the imposing glass door looming before them. Jonathan had already rehearsed his lines. His corporate charm was finely tuned for moments like this. However, Sarah felt out of rhythm. She struggled to conjure the right amalgamation of courage and conviction, the very elements required to navigate the unfamiliar territory they were about to enter. As they stepped inside, her heart raced in sync with the faint thrum of corporate ambition echoing off the pristine walls. The boardroom smelled of polished wood and expensive cologne, a constant reminder of the stakes involved. Gone were the city streets, replaced by board members whose expressions ranged from curious to impassive. They took their seats at the polished table, and Sarah placed the prepared documents in front of her, momentarily stealing a glance at the presentation slides. Each detail echoed her journey: the research, the late nights, the small victories. Let's focus on the broader goal first, Mary began, her voice confident and grounded. We're presenting a vision, not just data. Our initiative aims to elevate these children's lives through education and opportunities. But even as the words flowed with conviction, Sarah felt a churning doubt bubbling within her. The board members didn't look like they wanted to hear a story. They desired cold, hard evidence. When Jonathan spoke next, his voice rhythmically moved with the cadence of each bullet point he made, emphasizing tangible outcomes. By aligning our social responsibility with our bottom line, we can create a sustainable and profitable model. These children are not just numbers. They are potential success stories that can turn into brand ambassadors. At this, some board members leaned in, intrigued by the idea of profitability intertwined with social impact. Sarah felt a flicker of optimism igniting against the backdrop of her reservations. Perhaps they would connect. Perhaps they could penetrate the usual emotional walls of the boardroom. As the slides transitioned to financial forecasts, Sarah was aware of a heavy pit forming in her stomach. This was crucial, but how did she frame the metrics without losing the essence Mary had insisted on? She needed to speak, yet the words caught in her throat. "Let me add," she finally interjected, her voice trembling slightly but audible. "Each dollar invested in these children represents not just a financial return, but a transformational journey. To see them thrive is ultimately to gauge our success. We have the data, but we must share the stories behind the numbers." One board member, a woman sporting silver-framed glasses, scrutinized her. "Are you suggesting that we base our trust on emotions rather than facts?" The question struck Sarah hard, as if it were a challenge to her very foundation. Was that what she was suggesting? Was she trying to trade integrity for fleeting feelings? "No, not at all," she hurried to clarify. "The facts must remain. But without the humanity, we risk turning a blind eye to the narrative and the purpose behind our statistics." The silence that followed was daunting, but it felt like an invitation to deeper discourse. Mary nudged in. "We're suggesting balance. Our goal is to not only showcase how investing in these children turns a profit, but how it fuels a community, our community." Sarah felt their pathway branching more beautifully than before, filled with the potential for growth both professionally and personally. The engagement began to ripple through the room, but the board members didn't linger long on hope. As they steered back to numbers, graphs, and projections, Sarah realized the undercurrents of corporate alliances at play. Some board members seemed more interested in protecting their stakes than embracing a new vision, hidden rivalries looming beneath the surface. Her instincts prickled as she sensed an opposition forming closer to them. In that moment, realization hit her. This was more than a presentation. It was a crucible of her own evolution. She was learning, adapting, and confronting both external pressures and internal fears. With every exchange, she honed her professional persona, cultivating a balance between her heartfelt advocacy and the analytical rigor demanded by the room. Each question she answered added chapters to her own story, one punctuated by resilience and adaptability. As the presentation wound down and they awaited feedback, Sarah couldn't shake the apprehension tightening in her chest. Would her bold stance attract support or distrust? What truths would rise to meet them? "Remember, the ultimate goal is connection," Jonathan whispered, his eyes scanning the board members' faces for any flicker of acceptance. "Whatever happens next, we remain true to our mission." As Sarah took a steadying breath, she realized that she was tethered to more than just the proposal. She was solidifying her identity as a fierce advocate, capable of navigating the stormy sea of corporate negotiations. Yet even as the feedback began, she knew deep down that the end was only the beginning. The next step in her journey loomed ahead, filled with vital decisions. Who would they confront next in their pursuit for justice? "Are we ready for the repercussions of our choices?" she questioned silently as she stole a glance at the boardroom door, sensing that every exchange might just lead them deeper into uncharted territory. The boardroom buzzed with a mix of murmurs and the shuffling of papers as feedback began to pour in. Sarah sat at the table, engagement tangible in the air around her. Yet with each word, a war waged inside her. Jonathan's reassurance was faint against the clamor of her swirling thoughts. Could she truly balance empathy and logic? A senior board member, his brow furrowed deeply, leaned forward. "Your emotional appeal almost feels like a diversion from what we need to focus on. This isn't about hearts, it's about the bottom line. Data is king." A cold wave of dismay washed over Sarah. His words held authority and certainty, yet she couldn't shake the belief that hearts and statistics could coexist. Was her impassioned stance perceived not as strength but as weakness? Jonathan interjected, maintaining the positive tone. Absolutely. The metrics serve as our backbone. But without the human element, how do we ensure we aren't just another business algorithm? Sarah sensed the tension shift. Those in the room now vacillated between appreciating Jonathan's logic while wrestling with the threat Sarah's argument posed to their archetype of traditional corporate success. Taking a moment, Sarah steeled her resolve. A surge of clarity propelled her forward, a recognition that evoked a mix of courage and vulnerability. What if the data is only revealing part of the story? If we remember that our decisions carry weight beyond profits, we might inspire others to embrace this vision. The board shifted, all eyes now darting towards her. Was this how transformation began? Through raw honesty? One woman, who had remained silent throughout the presentation, finally chimed in with surprising warmth in her tone. Sarah, can you provide us more insight into exactly how we can ensure that this vision translates to tangible results? Relief washed over Sarah. A direct inquiry had emerged from the silence, and the opportunity to further clarify her vision stood before her. This was her moment to delve deeper into the transformative narratives behind the statistics. Yes, she replied, her voice gaining strength. Imagine the success stories we could bring forth, children who receive mentorship leading to jobs. Those stories will resonate with our consumers, resulting in an uplift in brand loyalty. We're not merely investing in education, we're planting seeds of potential that could yield continuous growth for our company. The receptive looks she garnered rejuvenated her belief in this endeavor. Yet, as she spoke, she studied the board members, attempting to discern their internal deliberations. Behind each calculating expression, she sensed uncertainty. Perhaps part of them was questioning their initial resistance. Then one individual, a man with graying hair, lashed out with practiced indignation. And how do we reconcile the risks associated with projecting emotional narratives? We could be painted as naive or manipulative. His challenge was a gut punch, dispelling Sarah's growing confidence momentarily. This was the moment she needed to stand unwavering amidst the scrutiny, an opportunity to reflect her resilience. Gaining composure, she answered, "Every bold move carries risk. Yet, if we are afraid of being labeled naive, we will miss the chance to become visionary pioneers in an industry resistant to change. Embracing this duality can enable us to craft a model that delivers both impact and sustainability." The back and forth had sharpened her acumen. Listening as the board debated entailed not only presenting her perspective, but understanding theirs as they confronted difficult questions. As voices clashed, with some supporting her and others clinging to traditional metrics, Sarah experienced a revelation, a hidden skill to adapt her argument based on their interaction and concerns. The realization struck her. What a fantastic opportunity for dialogue! Every challenge was a chance to evolve her response, revelation after revelation. The final notes of the meeting descended into a peculiar silence as deliberations stretched across the room. Sarah felt a wary anticipation. In this silence lay the consequence of their shared confrontation. Would they allow this initiative to take root, or would her efforts dissolve beneath the traditional metrics they'd relied upon for so long? She glanced toward Jonathan, seeking silent support, and noticed the similarly focused expressions of her colleagues. Their fates intertwined in this moment, their visions aligned in a shared purpose, to infuse humanity into corporate aspirations. But as they gathered their materials, the board's decision still hung like a pendulum. Could she prepare for the aftermath, whatever it might be? As the door swung open to let them out, a feeling loomed large in Sarah's chest. The stakes would only rise, and the truth of their journey was becoming perilously apparent. "Are we ready to embody this change?" she pondered, the doorway marking not an exit, but the beginning of yet another chapter, filled with challenging decisions, uncertainties, and the relentless pursuit of balance amid accumulating opposition. The next few days felt like a blur. Sarah oscillated between moments of hope and spirals of self-doubt. The board's hesitance to embrace her vision gnawed at her. She spent her evenings poring over reports and building more compelling projections that integrated both data and narratives, convinced there was a delicate balance to be achieved, one that would ultimately transform how they approached their mission. Yet, as the meetings loomed, she felt the familiar weight of anxiety creeping back in. What if the board decided against her proposal? What if her efforts came to naught? Each tick of the clock reminded her that time was slipping away, and she was caught in a race not just against the board's skepticism, but her own inner turmoil. One afternoon, while sipping coffee at a bustling cafe, she overheard a conversation that struck a deep chord within her. A couple sat beside her discussing the struggles of local homeless families, their children yearning for opportunities beyond their circumstances. The sincerity etched on their faces served as a stark reminder of why Sarah had ventured down this path, and it reignited a flame that had flickered during her tumultuous board meeting. "Every company has the power to make a difference," she whispered to herself, her conviction bubbling anew. She remembered Jonathan's encouragement, a touchstone of support. With newfound determination, she made a decision. She would not only revise her proposal to include stronger data points, but she would connect them to powerful, human-based stories, emphasizing the intrinsic value of compassion within corporate responsibility. In the days leading up to the next meeting, Sarah set her focus on honing her presentation. She sought out experts in fields related to community impact, scouring their insights to meld them into her narrative. Stories of mentorship success became her foundation. Testimonials painted vivid images of the lives poised for change, all backed by statistics showing the return on investment that these initiatives could provide. Each compelling data point forged a link to the emotional narratives she cherished. As Friday approached, Sarah knew she had to practice. Closer to the day of judgment, she arranged a mock presentation with Jonathan and a few trusted colleagues. The room was more than a backdrop. It became a crucible where her courage would be tested. As she spoke, she felt the tremors of fear, yet clarity emerged with each slide. With each narrative, the weight of her transparency broke through the tension. Her colleagues responded with enthusiasm, nudging her to embrace the flow of the moment. She tracked their reactions, soaking in the nods and even the light smiles that took the edge off her rising apprehension. "Sarah, this is powerful," Jonathan said after she finished her presentation. "You've bridged data with real-world impact beautifully. This could just be the avenue that changes perspectives." But still, dread fluttered at the edges of Sarah's mind. What if their enthusiasm didn't translate to boardroom approval? The fear, rooted in experience, gnawed at her as much as the doubt she sought to banish. She had gone this far, but the stakes felt even higher now. The night before the presentation, Sarah lay wide awake, reflecting on her journey. She envisioned the boardroom filled with expectant faces, the weight of her ambitions resting on her shoulders. This encounter would not just test her ability to persuade, it would lay bare her capacity to embody resilience amid uncertainty. Would her preparation resonate beyond the walls of their staunch tradition? Would she finally be able to wield her personal power alongside professional acumen? As those daunting thoughts rattled in her mind, she vowed to remain true to herself. Tomorrow, she breathed, is just another chance. One last thought broke through the swirl of worries. How would she handle the potential fallout if they rejected her again? That looming question left a shadow over her growing resolve. And Sarah realized that tomorrow would challenge not only her professional aspirations, but her very identity. As dawn broke, she found herself standing at the precipice of a moment that could either elevate her career or strip everything away. The time had come to face the board with unwavering resolve. Would her determination be enough to tip the scales in her favor? The boardroom glowed under harsh fluorescent lights, an environment both sterile and charged with anticipation. Sarah stood at the front, flanked by Jonathan and Mary, her breath steadying as she faced an array of seasoned executives. This wasn't merely a presentation. It was a legacy to fight for, a testament to her journey both personally and professionally. As her voice broke through the silence, confidence infused her tone with palpable energy. "Thank you for allowing us to present today," she began, her heart buoyed by the faces before her. "What we aspire to achieve goes beyond mere numbers. We aim to build a future filled with promise for the children of our community." The room seemed to lean in, her words resonating against the backdrop of their polished boardroom table. Each story she wove served as a lifeline, tethering the board members to the very lives they could impact. She showcased powerful testimonials alongside data, artfully blending the head and the heart, the emotional allure of the tales ensuring that the numbers didn't merely exist in a vacuum of spreadsheets. "Imagine children from the orphanage growing, thriving, and eventually becoming pillars of our community," Sarah stated, driving home the gravity of their potential impact. Investing in their futures is not a cost, it's an opportunity for all of us. As she spoke, Jonathan monitored the board's subtle reactions. His presence bolstered her stance, his unwavering support a gentle reminder that she wasn't alone. Midway through, he picked up seamlessly, adding layers of strategic insight. By investing in these initiatives, we're not only complying with our corporate social responsibility, but also closing the gap between our latest profitability models and sustainable impact. These children represent an untapped market of potential, and by nurturing them, we secure a robust future. Throughout the presentation, Sarah made eye contact, establishing a direct connection, a bridge between her world and theirs. She encountered skepticism, but also intrigue, acknowledging their expertise while inviting them into her reality. However, Sarah refrained, eager to counter the doubts, it's not only about profitability or growth, it's about legacy. What legacy do we leave behind if we choose to ignore those most in need? What kind of organization do we want to be? The question hung heavily in the air, palpable and pressing. And just then, a board member known for his candor spoke up. "That sounds compelling, but what if the funding doesn't yield the results you're promising?" he challenged, his brow furrowed with skepticism. "How do we ensure that we aren't just throwing money into a void?" In that moment, Sarah's initial pulse of fear transformed. She had wrestled with these skeptical voices before. She had anticipated them, and now her conviction surged. "It's about partnership," she leaned in confidently. "We propose to not only track the outcomes, but to establish a series of feedback loops for continual improvement. Ideally, you won't just see reports, you'll witness tangible progress. We will be accountable and transparent every step of the way." The back-and-forth dialogue ignited a spark in her. With each question, she became more resolute, a newfound fire blazing within her as she effectively defended every objection with poise. The tension shifted, and in the dialogue, she sensed a transformation, not simply within herself, but within the board members as well. As the presentation drew to a close, Jonathan placed a supportive hand on her back, a silent affirmation of their joint mission. The end of the presentation was met with silence, a heavy pause pregnant with possibility and gravity as the board members exchanged glances. "Well, Sarah, I must say," Mary interjected, "this was passionately presented and well thought out. When do we begin?" The crinkled brows softened, the earlier wariness lifting as voices of support grew stronger. But another board member raised a finger, still hesitant. "I'm intrigued, but I do still have reservations. Can we justify the financial implications? By investing in these children, we lessen the burden on our community welfare in the long run. They become self-sufficient, we foster productivity," Sarah countered, emphasizing the long-term vision. "We can provide them with mentorship programs, linking to local businesses, creating circles of economic viability." The dialogue twisted and turned, gradually coalescing into a unified voice advocating for the children's futures. Each member began to see not just the risk, but the profound impact this initiative could generate. Hours later, the board convened in a separate room, and Jonathan, Mary, and Sarah waited with bated breath. The gradual murmuring morphed into a palpable weight as uncertainty and anticipation collided. When the door finally opened and the board filed back in, energy shifted again, a tide surging within the room. "Let's vote," the lead board member announced, his eyes glimmering with an unsaid understanding. As hands raised around the table, a wave of relief swamped Sarah. The decision mirrored not just an approval of a budget, but a collective commitment to change the narrative. When the affirmation came, Sarah's heart soared. She had conquered her own doubts and transformed what began as a fight for funding into a resounding proclamation of collective purpose. Jonathan clasped her shoulder with pride, validation coursing through them both. In the days that followed, Sarah felt liberated, her identity crystallizing further as a professional advocate filled with newfound purpose. She wasn't merely a waitress or caretaker. She had proven that she could affect change in substantial ways. The orphanage flourished, not just in numbers, but in hope. She had set into motion a series of initiatives that would help bridge the gaps between corporations and communities, creating a foundation focused on collaboration, empathy, and tangible growth. As she stood in the orphanage the day they announced the first batch of funding, surrounded by the exuberant children, she realized her journey had not only changed lives, but had irrevocably transformed her own. Her voice found strength, her spirit unwavering, forever dedicated to ensuring the light of those children always shone bright. This was the moment that solidified Sarah's transformation. She was no longer just on the brink of change. She had stepped into her destiny, a leader born from resilience. Now was the time to share her story with the world. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, for every moment counts, and this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.